Hello, beautiful. Today we're going to talk about having a true sense of belonging and how we've sabotaged our belonging because we project that we don't belong or suddenly have shifted in our belonging, not realizing that a lot of times when suddenly we don't belong, it's really our wounds talking rather than our true sense of connection. I'm going to say that again. So a lot of us struggle with like an imposter syndrome, and that can trigger a sense of belonging. Because if we feel like an imposter, we don't feel safe that we have our seat in the group. And so sometimes we feel like quietly we're always vying for that sense of where do I belong here? And so we go in and out of connections. And interestingly enough, a lot of times the group stays connected, but we change the story based on hurts that we have and just a sense of self that has been shaken because of a lot of things that happen in our life, that we can go through like true connection and then all of a sudden feel like, oh, I really resonated, now I don't. And I can tell you so much so, like this happens so much in my work. And I just happened to be listening to some YouTubes about healing, and I love to see what other people are doing. And this woman sort of came forward about her journey as a healer and being plagued by the sense of not belonging for her whole life, even though she was doing great work. And so tended to move towards the outer circles of just that sense of feeling at home. And I think that's why a lot of women don't feel at home with their sisters, first because of our wounds through the masculine, and feeling insecure about our own relationships and being loved. And then also, so that's, like a father wound and the masculine wound, and then the mother wound of being maybe the nurturer a lot and not knowing how to receive nurturing. And so when we've got these blinders with our mother and father wounds, we'll have moments of true connection, but not a sustainable feel of I am connected to the world around me. I am loved. I am relevant. This is such a huge thing, and it's interesting because I'm not even really covering the things that sparked my initial interest in it in the first place. She was just kind of sharing her story as an older woman who just was in life review. But for me, it's probably just living a life of so much intensity, being a mystic and dealing with people's wounds, all the time, because I don't really have a filter, right? So I can walk down the hallway and go, or in the grocery store, and I just felt all the different cycles of women's groups that I've had over the last few decades, right? And it was this recurring theme that I would see where women would really reveal and they would feel connected, and then when they didn't have as much wound, it was harder for them to just show up and receive. Like, it was easier to come forward when they were broken and harder to come forward when it was just like, I just want to be here because this is my church. This is where I get fed. And I think that I started to really realize that in the last few years, because I couldn't authentically be a part of the church that I was raised in, but it made me a real outsider in my own family, because really the only topic they they cover as Catholicism. Like, no joke. I mean, it sounds extreme, but it's super extreme. In a lot of ways, it's beautiful because they love it and they love their faith, and they talk about interesting things like saints and, feast days. And, I love where they're connected, but it can kind of be isolating too, to not have all the ingredients of a group. And so I just really prayed about that when I listened to the woman's video, and I thought, this is a thing. Like, this is a real thing. And, we could have a retreat and then you're not on the next one and then not feel like you belong the same. Or we gather on in the Michigan, and something beautiful happens, and then we're in California. And it could even happen on the mainland. We're in California, we have a really great meetup in the mainland, and then we're not connected. We're not connected from Avalon. And I know most of you would never feel this way, but I've seen it for so long that in some way, I think everybody that I've ever worked with has felt this way. And so they want to have me like quietly to the self on the side, let me share this with you. I don't want to share it with the group, it's private. And it's like, that's usually too much too for me, because I can't do all of my clients and then the side conversations and then the groups and stuff. So I have to really guard my sense of belonging as well. So it's there's so many facets to this, because we can overbelong and we can underbelong. And the truth is that down deep, all of our belonging comes from our connection to the Christ consciousness within us. That literally the becoming her analogy, that there's this essence with you that's already with source energy. And it's always there. But when we're not belonging to ourselves, it gets rocky belonging to the ins and outs of our churches, our organizations, our sports groups, our community volunteerism, our careers, people within our careers, our friends group that we have coffee with. It's easier to doubt if we belong and feel like an imposter if we don't really understand the full meaning of connecting to our divine feminine and the essence that, we're feminine in this life, we're women in this life. We still have to balance the masculine and the feminine, but ultimately there's this incredibly beautiful you, is flawless, that is the most radiant encounter you would ever have in your life, because it would be God shining through you to who your true self is. And that is where we always belong. But we didn't learn because we're in a three-dimensional realm of contrast. We haven't been parented or stewarded into this self that we are, that is beyond anything you could ever imagine, that I could ever imagine. Yet when I can allow myself to quiver into her, to breathe into her, to walk into her and swim into her, when I can bring nature into myself, when I can drop my meditation into emptiness, and basically, in order to connect that highly to yourself, you have to not belong to the world. But it's the one time when you don't belong to the world that you feel truly connected. And when you don't belong to the world, but you belong to God, then all of a sudden, everything comes together. And so, the expansive awareness of love that is completely limited to call it a name. There's no name for what created us. We just try. So we use the words that we were raised to use, or the words that we encounter, that seem to make sense, but what you are connected to source energy is beyond any outward sense of belonging in this world. And when you can get to a place where you belong to you in your highest form, you will never, ever, ever feel disconnected from belonging outside of yourself, in your circles and groups and churches, and because there's no outside source, not even a beautiful church, the most beautiful one you've ever been to. They're still human. It's not ever that really they reject you, but that we reject our role within the dynamic, because we're suffering inside. But when we are connected to source, you cannot suffer. You will not suffer. And then you raise the elevator to that frequency. You raise the elevator to that frequency. And you marinate in that aliveness. And your relationships heal. And your body heals. And your path heals. And it becomes more meaningful. And it's okay that you're on 3D Earth because you chose to be here and you want to be here every minute that you can to learn and become, because this is the greatest place to learn. I mean, we hear that all the time when you study spirituality. It's like you chose to come here. This is a great honor to be here, right? So all of this inconsistency that we have in ourselves about not belonging, and we all have it, so there's no one that doesn't have it that I've ever met, ever. Unless they were just so disconnected from being deeper, which some people are, but I don't tend to be in those energies very long. I do encounter them, I guess, but not for very long. But the true depth, the deep souls, we go in and out of that, especially as empaths, because we pick up different messages. But sometimes we only pick up the message through our wound. And we don't. And how many of you have heard me say that to you at some point in our conversations or our sessions? And they'll tell me their story and they'll tell me what's happening. I'm like, oh, but that was coming to you because of your wound. They may or may not even be like that. They might not even think that. But through our wounds, aspects of people's behaviors seems so much more, I'm going to say offensive, but I think a lot of us even don't allow ourselves to get that offended because we're so forgiving of other people's places in life and what they're going through. So it's a mix of really knowing our empathy for the world, but not letting our empathy misdirect us into not belonging, when our true sense of self is so needed. It's connected to Christ consciousness, which is the overcomer and the great unifier and the great connector. And you cannot be connected to her that is within you and feel divided from the world. So I think this beautiful video of this she was an awesome, simple woman. You know, it's like at times I almost wanted to turn it off because it was not as deep spiritually, and I love that language, but I just listened to it and I just feel like God was sending me a message through YouTube of like this. Create community where people can go through their sense of not belonging at times, but keep each other connected at all times. It's a beautiful thing. You belong here. You're cherished here. You're needed here. And what you bring heals us. I love you.